reports. And first up, we're going to get an update on the Rakatata Revival Program. So if you'd like to come forward, please. Thank you. Welcome. We have, I believe, from EGAN, Anna Ivanova, Kim Whittle. We also have John Henry. Thank you. And Brad Reeves, is it? Brad Edwards. Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Brad. Would you like to take us through the Rakatata Revival Program? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Called Brad Edwards, tōku ingoa. I work for the Department of Conservation out of the Geraldine office. So I'm a local very much, and I am the Vice Chair of the Working Group of the Rakatata Revival Program. Our program has a name, and that is also the name of our guiding strategy which we have drafted. Ko te whakahaumanu o te Rakatata. Basically translates to the revival of the Rangitata Rua. The people you see before me all have key roles. It is a collaboration across agencies, and we are hoping to move that out into our wider community and really seek community engagement coming up. We were established, for each agency there's been a different route in, and we all have our own stories. For the Department of Conservation, it began all the way back in 2011. The New Zealand Conservation Authority presented a report to the Minister of the time, and that report noted that there were losses in the intrinsic values of rivers across New Zealand. And not only that, but mana whenua were unable to exhibit their treaty rights. As a response to that, the Conservation Authority recommended the department establish a project called Na'awa. This came into formation in 2018, so it was a long time in its inception. That program was basically, it was announced in 2018 by the Minister. You wouldn't believe it. It was here to protect the intrinsic values of a representative sample of New Zealand rivers and allow mana whenua to express their treaty rights. So basically it was word for word what the report had requested. That effectively started off the Department of Conservation having a discussion with the Runaka, Te Runaka o Arawhenua as mana whenua, about whether or not they saw, for a start, a project being appropriate or not. At that time, I came to this forum and gave a briefing around, hopefully, the hopes and where a project like this could go. In late 2019, most of the agencies met on Arawhenua o Marae. So that was ECAN, Department of Conservation, Timaru District Council was represented by B, of course Arawhenua, and that was really a formulative moment for us. It was where Arawhenua threw down the challenge to our agencies and our groups that we should restore the Rakatata of the Awa, and we shouldn't just restore it, but we should restore the Maori of the Awa. And that was, from that point on, that was the driving gist behind our project. Later on, we actually had Ashburton District Council come into the fray as well, and Fish and Game. Fish and Game are a little bit separate because they are not represented on the steering group at the top table, the decision-making group. However, they are engaged in our working group and all the work we do. So this little representation is basically shows the way our group is structured. At the very centre of our group is support for mana whenua and their aspirations for the awa. Around that are gathered the Crown agencies, Timaru District Council being included. Outside that, we have and that group forms the working groups and the steering groups. Outside that, we have all the other people that we're seeking our engagement with, all the other engagement actions that we have underway, reaching out to research institutions, education facilities, our wider community and landowners. So right from the start, we had a lot of really clear direction from Ara Whenua, and basically, right from 2019, Ara Whenua had defined a vision that we were united under. So that vision is that with our community, we value, protect and restore the Māori of the Rakitata Awa, Kiuta Ki Tai. And Kiuta Ki Tai is an essential ingredient of Ngāi Tahu's philosophy around land management. It's often translated as from mountains to sea, but in fact it also includes all those holistic and wider catchment impacts on the river as well. So it's an all-embracing concept of the relationship, not just purely of the physical river, but the metaphysical and then the wider environment that has impacts on it. And from that, we developed our mission, which is to bring together Te Rūnaka o Ara Whenua as mana whenua and kaitiaki of the Rangitata Awa. Our government agencies and the community, our collective mahi, will support restoring a long-term and healthy Māori of the Awa, Kiuta Ki Tai. Anna, did you want to explain our structure? That'd be great.
What I've read.
Thank you.
Inihana kia koutou i tēnei rā. My name is Anna Ivanova. I am a program manager to the Rakitata Revival Program. And briefly about the team structure and what have we actually been focusing in the meantime since the formation of the program. This is what our program team structure looks like. It's quite diverse and covers quite a lot of levels, as you can see. So it starts off at the very top with a steering group where we've got the chief executives or the equivalent of all the partner agencies helping us with the strategic direction of the program and helping us on the alignment, interagency alignment, making sure the objectives are aligned and all go hand in hand. From there, we've got the working group. So we've got pretty much one representative from each partner agency sitting on the working group, helping with the oversight of the program, driving the progress, helping with resources and risks and issues and making sure that the work gets done, essentially the work that we've planned for. From Timaru District Council, of course, we've got Hamish Burrell on the working group and a few others as well on the operational level, so every agency is represented there. In the working group, we've also got some special roles like comms and engagement advisors. You can imagine this is quite a big task to cover and make sure all the comms and messaging is consistent and coherent, as well as the engagement with all our key parties needs quite close attention and detailed planning. So we've got Kim Whitwell sitting right next to me who looks after these aspects. We've also got cultural advisors, so Araki Environmental consultancy cultural advisors supporting us in this journey, as well as some of the technical advisors helping us in terms of the planning and statutory questions. This group is a non-statutory group and the program doesn't make any decisions in the statutory space, just of note, but we do take actions and if any questions or any issues arise in that statutory space, we make sure we do escalate it up to the steering group so that each agency chief executives can have appropriate conversations in that space. We've also got an operational level, so those are the staff members who are boots on the ground, essentially getting the mahi done. Again, operational staff, we've got the crew from Ara Whenua as well, doing lots of restoration work on the awa for us, and each work stream has a project lead and the team behind it. So it's pretty well resourced at present, as you can tell, and we're making sure that with all the funding that we had available in the last few years and all the staff that have been available to support us, we're making the most out of it in the meantime. So this is what we've been focusing since the formation of the program. Appreciate this. There's a lot of colours and it looks quite complex. There's a reason behind that. So the revival strategy being the absolute centerpiece is the big red box. This is our main roadmap and the key output document that we want to get out of this current sort of program progress. This will set up all the key objectives and specific goals and the targets per each on the hour. From there, all the dark blue boxes are outputs, so something that ideally would like to have as a result of the strategy. The light blue boxes are something that needs to happen before the strategy is finalised. However, we have been quite fortunate, as I've already mentioned, to receive some funding from central government across the board, Jobs for Nature, COVID shovel-ready funding, that we have actually been able to progress pretty much virtually all of these boxes in the meantime while we've been co-drafting the strategy in the last few years as well. The labels of the agencies only tell us that some agencies have already had some work kicked off prior to that, or like I said, it had some available funding to help us out with the progress. We all have been focusing on building that trusted relationship and the true partnership in the meantime as well, so we all operate as one team and will continue to do so as well. So all of these work streams, happy to report, are underway, and we've seen some really great progress on the ground as well as in the collaboration space in the meantime. Some of the great examples, and surely some of the examples that you may have been involved in, is the Make It Safe works. So this has been made possible with the climate resilience shovel-ready funding from central government that Environment Canterbury has received in 2020. So these were the immediate repair works post-2019 floods on the Rangitara River. The plan and all of the details have, of course, been discussed with Arowhenua Runaka as well and made in collaboration. Phase 1 is now complete. Phase 2 is now also complete, where we've had some additional infrastructure works upstream around Arundel as well, downstream across multiple sites. So all of that work is done, which is really good news. Also part of the shovel-ready funding was the immediate temporary works of the Peel Forest landfill, which I'm sure you're all across as well. So Environment Canterbury have completed these works, and we acknowledge the support and participation from the Timaru District Council in this regard as well. So this long-term solution and the progress of this work stream is now sitting with TDC, and we're getting regular updates and look forward to working together on this in the future as well. Greg, if you want to take us through the Jobs for Nature progress, please.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Emma. So I just wanted to add that so around the country, the Department of Conservation has effectively tried to seed 14 of these projects in 14 different catchments, and each catchment is being led locally, and local decisions are shaping what it's like. It's not under a central direction about what our project should or shouldn't be. It's up to us locally to shape our project, to decide where our resources will go, about what our priorities are, and that is in some ways the beauty of what we've managed to do. We're collaboratively talking across the agencies in mana whenua and making our local decisions. Sorry, I meant to mention that at the start. I think you'll find that there's actually incredible progress being made over the last 3 years. I actually wanted to be spending my time thinking about and developing the long-term strategy, because we're trying to get to the point of having this intergenerational rolling strategy where all the agencies can regularly come together and decide what the priorities are and as they change and where we fit. So that has actually progressed, but what has happened as well is that we've had some huge opportunities, and one of them was the Jobs for Nature funding. So rather naively, I applied for the Jobs for Nature post-COVID funding and was awarded around $8 million over 4 years. That's $8 million to each of the program recipients. That is because part of the central government funding philosophy was that the work would not be undertaken by the department, although we would be administrating the release of the funds. We wouldn't be doing the work ourselves, and that meant we looked around for our most obvious community partners who would be able to put things into play quickly. And in the upper river, we looked to the Upper Rangitata Gorge Landcare Group, and in the lower river, we approached Arawhenua. And both those groups grasped the opportunity, and they've made significant gains over the last 2 years. This has meant they have been empowered to make the decisions around what the funding will be used for. We've tried to direct them and give advice, and to align their work with the strategy that we've been working on, but the decisions have been theirs and owned by them. So in the upper catchment, the Upper Rangitata Landcare Group have fenced up to the end of June 116 kilometres of riparian wetland and river edge. So pretty large scale. They've also planted over 200,000 riparian plants. In the lower river, Arawhenua have also planted, over 100,000 riparian plants. In the lower river, Arawhenua have had a slightly different focus because their interests have lain particularly with Mahinga Kai values and cultural values, and they've set about restoring 5 key cultural sites. And with that, they have employed a group of young people, a group of kaimahi who are actively working on the river every day, and so it's become an employment opportunity effectively for them, the opportunity for them to build a business unit around river restoration and ecological restoration work. So they have also planted over 100,000 plants in the last 2 years. We control, this is a biggie for the catchment. It was always going to be right up there as far as prioritised work. The reason is that it sort of underpins a lot of the other work in the riverbed. If we don't suppress woody weed growth in the riverbed, the river will cease being dynamic. The shingles will be bound. We will see gorse and broom islands dominating, and particularly in the upper river where the Landcare Group has been working for the last 30 years, and there is a relatively clean riverbed. We've really sought to maintain that and to support those partners already doing work. So currently the scale of our work is around $170,000 worth of aerial and ground work per annum in the upper riverbed. We are currently probably struggling to maintain that amount of effort given our current funding in the next 2 years. That will become a pinch point for us. However, at this stage, we're really trying to get the weed burden down and the potential seed sourcing down as small as we can, so that when that funding drops, hopefully we'll be really well placed. Predator control, we now have over 4,000 traps running from the coast to the confluence of the Havelock and Clyde. That means effectively that all of the threatened bird breeding habitat is now covered by predator control. This project has actually allowed 3 separate groups to come together to integrate their control to complement each other. So we have the Upper Rangitata Gorge and agencies work, which has traditionally been done upstream from the Rangitata Gorge. Then we have the Landcare Group, which have put in additional trapping with some of the Jobs for Nature funding through the gorge section and down onto Mount Peel Station. And then from Mount Peel Station and the run out to the coast, Arawhenua have put in around 2,000 predator control traps. These traps are being serviced monthly. It's no small feat. This is now, a real landscape model piece of trapping. What's happening now is through the strategy, we're starting as partners to have this discussion around looking at our outcome monitoring, the results on the birds, working out what's working, what isn't, how do we tweak this network now, do we need to focus more on certain areas? So all those questions are currently at play. Kim, do you want to talk about strategy or shall I?
I'm happy for you to if you want to.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll give it a crack. this is where I've spent quite a lot of my time trying to develop and co-develop the revival strategy. So currently our strategy is in two halves. And the first half is all about who we are, what our overall vision is, how do we work, those sorts of contextual questions about our group and what it is and how it works. The second part is actually all about the targets and actions we want to see actually done on the awa. And because of that, and the fact that we're going to take that out to the community and ask them for their feedback and try and build that back into the plan, we're really hungry for that. We've tried to create a document that is fairly easy for people to interpret. So you can see we've really gone for illustrations on each of the sections of the awa that show, what our vision actually looks like. So you can see there, that's a section of McKinnon's Creek, and you can see some of the tonga species there we want to see. You can also see the fact that agriculture is seen as an ongoing part of this program. You can see in a key community interest in the area, and you can also see that mana whenua are active and playing an engaged role in protecting the environment and habitat there. So there's a whole lot of different things going on in those strategies, and we'll be looking to release that strategy out into the wider community for consultation. At this stage, we've been sort of legging it back. We've been trying to fit a whole lot of work in, and we don't want to put it out there half-cooked, but we've sort of in our minds had the idea that we wanted to have it well out there and receiving feedback from the community and even closed maybe by Christmas. So we're really hungry to get it out there. The medium for doing that is through our website. So we want to just post the whole thing out there and people can see it and view it in their entirety. We don't want to scare them with just snippets or half bits of things. We want to actually put the whole thing out there and enable them to see it and give us their feedback. So that's what we've got coming up in the strategy development space. Once we've got the feedback, we want to actually bring that back into our group and work out what we think fits. And I really think we're going to see some really interesting community interests coming forward. I suspect things like climate change are actually going to be resonating higher with the community than we currently have it in the strategy. I think things like our huts communities may be saying they want to start exploring what the future of where they go or what can be done to protect them. So I suspect it'll be really interesting, and I think the community consultation will add another facet to this. Right. Did you want to give a wee brief on the South Branch, Hannah?
Sure. So this is a subset, so we're talking about the public land management work stream here as a subset of the BRAG work that some of you may be familiar with, the Braidwood River Action Group. Briefly, the overall idea here is to essentially, as Crown agencies, agree and align on the best practice approach to the public land management across the board. That includes a lot of data collection, of course, again, alignment on the information that we've got, sharing, sort of cross-agency sharing of that information as well, and of course all of that mapping done across Braidwood Rivers, across the whole nation, theoretically. Rangitata being one of the really good examples where this is a really complex environment in terms of that information. Some of it is missing, some of it is really tricky. So how do we work together again in partnership with all the Crown agencies to clarify these things and move towards the best practice approach to management of the Crown land? This is one of the pivotal work streams for us as well, to make sure that we've got that information available, but also plays a big role in the South Branch investigations, which I'll talk about in a second, helping us understand and set that baseline to what that actually looks like. What is the mapping of the land ownership across the South Branch and the main stem of the Rangitata? Getting that information across and making sure we're all talking to the same data. One of the things that Brett has already touched on, of course, has been quite pivotal also is the setting up of the Arawhenua Nursery. All of this funding, Jobs for Nature in particular, but all of this work also come into surface, and us wanting to help and support each other in this mahi, really drove the initiative of setting up a nursery that would be run by Arawhenua Kaimahi, and have given them a really good reason to set it up as a business. And pretty much all of the plants, virtually all the plants that we have been using across the awa and all of the restoration works have been sourced from the nursery now. Again, this gives the longevity and the long-term plan for all the staff that have been employed, capability, capacity building, all of those good things as well. And the long-term plan, of course, is to make sure that we can sustain this, is to ensure that we've got opportunities coming up and make sure that, the nursery can thrive in the long term. There are a range of science investigations that are, of course, required to make some of these decisions and to make sure that we have all the details on the work we are involved. It ranges from very technical, LIDAR, water balance modelling, a whole range of science investigations to some of the Matarangamari investigations, bird surveys. There's so much that can be done and should be done in that space. So we've come up with a list that initially we could work together on. There's about eight or nine investigations on that list, and the data essentially that we're receiving as a result of these investigations, again, is being shared across the organisations and very much feeds into the decisions in terms of the drafting of the strategy and the work plans for the restoration sites and all of these things. So we're making sure that we've got all the details and data available as well. Just before we wrap up, see that we're running out of time. One of the very important work streams, of course, that we are kicking off as a partnership is the South Branch Future Vision. Excuse me. Where we as a group want to investigate potential of the future design for the South Branch. So this is very much a discovery process that we as a group have come up with. We've got a really good structure. We've got a roadmap with specific steps that we want to achieve as a group as well. And we've worked on it together, and everyone is in agreement that this is the right way of doing it amongst us. So the discovery process essentially touches on all of the agencies that are involved, as well as, of course, the community groups, which is a pivotal part of the whole kōrero, of the whole discussion around the South Branch. And the key purpose of this is to understand the key values and aspirations of the key groups across the South Branch, and collectively come up with some of the options for the future design. I just want to highlight that this is very much a discovery process focused work stream. There are no predefined outcomes that we, at least as a partnership, are coming to the table with. We do want to focus on the discussion and conversation piece with as many people involved and interested across the South Branch as possible. And we've got a really solid, detailed engagement plan as well that we're working on now. We're planning to start those face-to-face conversations with lots of groups in the near future, sort of towards the end of this year. Some of those conversations have already started. So this is a big piece of work, and it's going to be, again, with a long-term vision. It won't happen overnight, as we can all imagine. This will take time, but we are prepared to work together to see what the future holds and what the key community groups and all of the agencies bring to the table, and what are their thoughts and key values and aspirations over this work stream. Okay, right, and we'll just wrap up with our comms and engagement work stream that Kim can brief us on.
Kia ora, Kim Whitwell, Comms and Engagement Lead for the program. I suppose the key sort of piece to communicate in this space is that we're working on 3 big work streams at the moment. Number 1 is a storytelling work stream, so that's basically gathering people's stories from along the awa and sort of facilitating the sharing of those stories. It's including videos and written content, and we're just working through the approvals for that. So once they're all done, we'll have kind of like a content plan to start pushing them out and hopefully build some more community connection to the awa. The second work stream is the strategy consultation that Brad was talking about earlier. At this stage, we're looking to go public with that in early September, and that'll be probably a couple of workshops with some key stakeholders, and then of course the wider public comms campaign. That'll be online surveys and documents and stuff like that. And then the third key work stream is, of course, the South Branch, which, like Anna said, we've got a pretty hefty engagement plan that's in drafting at the moment. And yeah, last thing would be we've got the newsletter online sign up as well. That's established now. So if you want to receive updates straight to your inbox, there's the link on the slide that you can sign up to the newsletter. Okay. Want to do that, Brad?
Thank you very much for Timaru District Council's engagement and support of this project. What has been amazing, what I've seen, is the collaboration across our group. It's been really gratifying to hear the personal stories from people, what this project has meant to them, and how it's changed people's lives as well. That is amazing. So I really hope for the future that we can all continue on this path. It's been amazing having people like Hamish here working with us and engaged. We are, as always, like all groups like this, constantly locked in the struggle for resources and support. So I just want to thank you very much for the council for your support that you've given us. Thank you.
Thank you, team, for that comprehensive report. I am a little bit conscious of time, but councillors, do we have any questions that we'd like to ask John, Brad, Anna, or Kim? Councillor Scott.
Thank you. My question is just around the South Branch future design engagement program. I was quite keen to hear from John actually on his views on that, because working, as we all know, with the Braided River, it has its own lifeline, and we can only manipulate something for so long, and we're spending millions. So I'm quite keen to hear from John on his aspirations and also his view for Braided Rivers.
Kia ora. I don't know if that's on. It's on, is it? Yep. Kia ora koutou. The South Branch has been manipulated. It's actually been, stopped from flowing. Years ago, it's been stopped by man. Other than that, it was flowing anyway. But it's been stopped. We would like to see it back again as part and parcel of trying to, help with a large flooding and things like that, that would allow it to flow rather than have it have the main road and railway lines sort of compromised. That's the reason why we say it, and it should have been back in anyway. For the one part that is missing on that South Branch is the fact that there is no area for our native fish and wetlands that could possibly replenish along those parts of the river that's gone now. So it's just restoring what was there. At the moment, there is a temporary bund that has been put in to stop the South Branch from flowing. It was very much more structured in the past, but we have asked the ECAN and others to look at the possibility of putting in the South Branch, reinstating it in whatever shape is safe. It has to be safe for people. That's the hard part as far as it's concerned, and it's going to take the local community to come on board with this to make it possible anyway. It's just one of those items that we feel should be there. Our wetlands on the Rakitata is very limited, and that was a wetland further down as well, so it's just part and parcel of what we'd like to see happen. But yeah.
Thank you, John. Any further questions? Mayor Bowen?
Thanks. Look, and you touched on it briefly, sort of, I think, where's my notes? Sorry, the land care group at the Upper Rangitata. So is that a farming group? What is the...
Sorry, Nigel. So the Upper Rangitata Gorge Landcare Group have been active carrying out river management, aligned management for 30 years now, and in particular their interest has been to suppress woody weed growths and to allow the braided river system to be, dynamic and fluvial and free moving. So, they have won numerous national awards and a lot of recognition. They're fairly well known. They are formed from all of the 11 high country farms, basically from Mount Peel Station upstream.
Yeah, fantastic. So I guess my question to that is, and I think I met someone at the Lower Rangitata planting day when former Minister Kerry Allen was there at the time, but we won't go into that. But my point, I guess, that I want to make is that those landowners, when they're really involved from early onset, become the champions of these programs. And my question and challenge to the revival program is, what is happening with those other landowners on the lower area? Are they involved now? What conversations has had with them? Because I actually probably don't think their aspirations are, too indifferent from, Mana Whenua and other, agencies. They just need to be brought along with the journey. So I'm just wanting to put that one challenge in question: what conversation is had with those people to this point?
I think you're correct in your analysis that there's been less engagement with lower river landowners to date. That is basically what we're trying to effectively turn around with this engagement process that we're doing in the run into Christmas and the release of the strategy. We're sort of hoping that once we start getting the feedback from that process, that will allow us to start seeing which groups are particularly wanting to be engaged, and therefore we can start planning our engagement workshops.
I would just say, if you own land in that catchment, they probably want to be engaged. So, look, I mean, the learnings that we have, and you'll all know that, is if we don't keep people in the tent, they don't have enough information, and so just let's do that sooner than later. Because I think this is such a cool program. To your point, it has changed lives. There's some fantastic stories about, people that haven't had jobs and have entered the workforce for the first time. It's got the opportunity to be something so positive for the region. But, we just need to do everything and work hard. And some of those challenging conversations, we just need to have them straight up. And so I challenge you to do that sooner than later. Thanks.
Councillor Pye?
Thanks. I'll just echo what Mayor Byron has had to say and confirm that as a landowner in that area, we've had no engagement at all, and that has created a feeling of distrust or unknown or alarmist or whatever you want to call it. And if you'd brought us in the tent earlier on, we'd be, like Nigel said, and possibly champions of this. I just wondered if you could talk to a little bit more the desktop example of transferring management or ownership of land parcels and what that actually means, because like I say, without knowing what that means, it just screams alarm bells to landowners in that South Bank.
Right. My understanding is that some of the land tenures and administration, particularly by Crown agencies, can be very complex. And in fact, under a single irrigator pivot, there is an example where we have AMF, Linsdoc and ECAN leases, all with different conditions on land use and management. And so basically what we're trying to do is seek an aligned management. Our grand hope was in fact to actually bring that together under a single agency type leadership, and in that way make it have good robust rules but make it easy for people to understand and good for farmers as well.
I'd be fully supportive of that, because dealing with 3 or 4 different agencies is very inefficient of everyone's time.
Well done with questions, councillors. Thank you very much. The motion is to receive and note the presentation or the update from the project partners of the Rakatata Revival Program. Can I get someone to move that, please? Mayor Bowen, someone second that, thank you. Councillor Burt, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your presentation. Superb work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Report 7.2 is the Environment Canterbury request for feedback, the Canterbury Regional Policy Statement. So I believe we have from ECAN, Zella Smith and Deirdre Francis. Welcome.
Kia ora. I'll just wait for our presentation to pop up. There we go. So, ko Zella Smith taku ingoa. I'm a Principal Planning Advisor for Environment Canterbury. I'll let Deirdre introduce herself.
Ko Deirdre Francis, taku ingoa. I'm a Principal Planner at Environment Canterbury.
Just a little bit of background. Environment Canterbury is going through a revamp of our planning process, working alongside Ngāi Tahu and Papatipu Runanga. And we're just going to speak to you a little bit about where we're at with engagement and the program today. Excellent. So at this point in time, we're going to run through what we're doing with the regional policy statement and how we're engaging with communities to gain an understanding of their visions for freshwater and the outcomes that they want to see across the region. We need to hear as many voices as we can so that we can set enduring outcomes together. To kick off, I'll just go touch briefly on what a regional policy statement is. The Canterbury Regional Policy Statement provides an overview of the resource management issues in the Canterbury region and the objectives, policies and methods to achieve integrated management of natural and physical resources. It sits within the hierarchy of resource management documents, where the RPS has to give effect to and implement the legislation that sits above it. The direction set within the regional policy statement is really important because it guides the development of both the regional and the district plans that sit beneath it. Once directions set in the RPS, it must be given effect to in the same way that we give effect to national legislation. The RPS also sets roles and responsibilities for some areas where there's overlap between district and regional council functions, such as managing land for natural hazards. So what's in an RPS? It starts off with issues, then flows through to objectives, policies and methods. It doesn't contain rules, those come through in the district and regional plans. So what I've got up on this slide, which is cluttered and small and hard to read, are the topics from the New Zealand planning standards that have to be in a regional policy statement. These are the minimum standards. We can add additional chapters, and one that we're considering is a climate change standalone chapter, or we could have climate change threaded throughout the RPS as a whole. That's part of the conversation that we'll be having going forward. So, why are we reviewing it now? There's a few reasons we're reviewing the RPS at the moment. It's been 10 years since the last RPS review took place, so legally it's due for renewal. But fundamentally, there's been a lot of new national policy that the regional policy statement needs to align with. The National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management in particular is driving notification of a new RPS by December 2024. As you'll be aware, we've got a lot of disruption coming through with national reforms, both the RMA and local government reform. And so having a new RPS in place that reflects the values and aspirations of our community now, as opposed to what it was 10 years ago, helps set us in a good place ahead of any of that kind of disruption. It'll ensure that we have some enduring policy direction to act through this time of potential uncertainty. So, the timeframes and opportunities to engage, as you'll appreciate, if we have to have something notified in December 2024, our timeframes are pretty tight. So we've put together a series of engagement opportunities between now and then for the community to have their say. There's two important stages to this feedback. The first round, which is where we are at the moment, is about setting enduring outcomes, what people want to see for Waitaha and for their communities. Once we've identified the outcomes, we'll be back with a second round of engagement to consider how those outcomes will be achieved. It's proposed that second round will take place in October, November. So at the moment, the conversations that we're having are very high level. What do you want to see and how do you feel about where we are now? The October, November round, we'll actually have some stuff written down that's taken from those conversations that we're having at the moment, so people will get a clearer idea of what we're actually on about, because it's pretty waffly at the moment. From late 2024, the formal consultation process on the RPS will begin. That's where everyone gets the opportunity to formally submit, with the opportunity to be heard during the hearing process. So, engagement components. We've targeted stakeholder engagements, broader public engagements, and are working with Runanga all at targeted level. The style of delivery with each of those groups may change a little, but the basic information is the same. So, as I've alluded to, we've got a small window of time to undertake the first round of engagement. So we're using online methods to get as wide as coverage across the region as possible. The platform for information, so all the background sort of science and where we're at the moment, is on our website, and people are constantly referred back there, so we're speaking the same message across the board. We have targeted meetings for territorial authority staff, so Hamish and his team are invited to bring along anyone within TDC that they think would benefit from hearing or adding their feedback at this stage across the engineers, the assets people, wherever they can add value. We're using existing relationships, such as with Deirdre, who's a district planning liaison planner, to try to get the information from Timaru District staff as much as we can. There are recordings available as well on each of the topics that we're focusing on at the moment. Okay, what do we need from people? We're trying to hear from people what they value and what they'd like to change, whether our current direction is about right. Obviously, everything's connected, and achieving one outcome will mean consequences or new opportunities for another. And we need to know what people are willing to do to move us to the future that they want to see. What are they prepared to give up or to compromise? So just a quick what's next. We're undertaking 3 themed engagement rounds this year. This, the current one, which is on visions and freshwater outcomes. The one on transport, which is a targeted one in the middle of the year, and then the third campaign in October and November, where we'll report back with draft visions and outcomes from what we hear in this first engagement round. From there, we'll start drafting the regional policy statement, and we'll begin the formal RM consultation process in late 2024 with notification in December. And so I would encourage you to go through to our website to look at the opportunities for engagement, the webinars that we have. We did have a drop-in session in Timaru last night, and unfortunately this is now a day late to tell you about that. We have one in Ashburton tonight and one in Kurau in September. Yeah. So that's what we've got for you today. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Could be an opportunity perhaps to bring in Councillor Piddington, who's joined us on Zoom. Do you have any questions at all, Stu? He's all good. Any other questions from the floor? Councillor Pye.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I just want to get a bit of an understanding of how does this fit with the Resource Management Act change? Is that all the work that ECANS has done on Plan Change 7, does that go out the window, or kind of how it fits in the bigger picture?
Thank you. As you'll appreciate, there's a lot of mess and noise in the resource management space at the moment. We're directed to have a freshwater planning instrument notified by 2024, despite what's happening with the Resource Management Act reform. So focusing on the regional policy statement, what we're trying to do is set us up well to transition into the regional spatial strategies that we will need as the building block for that process. Because of the timeline that we're working on ahead after 2024, people will keep operating under the existing planning framework for some indeterminate amount of time, which will include PC7. And we do see the more recent of our plan changes, such as PC7, as those stepping stones towards the outcomes that we're going to need to achieve under the National Policy Statement for Fresh Water.
Any other questions from the floor? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Cooper.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, if that's okay. Sorry, just, Paul Cooper, I'm just the GM for Environmental Services, and obviously we're at a particular time in our district plan review, and I've just got to be careful how I say this, but we did have the MPS for highly protected land drop on us late last year. It was about 2 weeks after we notified, I think. So that was lucky, we squeaked in there. But it's had an unforeseen impact for Timaru District in that it constrains our ability to expand our urban footprint, either for industrial development or for residential, really. Because we're surrounded by highly productive land, either class 1, 2 or 3. So my question is, what is our opportunity to influence the classification of the soils and how they might feed into that NPS so that we can actually secure some land for expansion should we need it over the next 10 to 25 years?
We will be back with some maps because part of that is our responsibility is the mapping. So that October engagement round will have some maps to show you. However, Deirdre, have you got a bit more to add on that one?
Yeah, the maps are based on the S-maps, which are done by Manaki Whenua, Landcare Research, and once they're completed, then a team will be talking with all of the territorial authorities, looking at what that produces and having some discussion about where boundaries should and shouldn't be.
Thanks very much, I just wanted to understand that. Thanks.
Councillor Booth.
What's the time frame around that? You just mentioned about the maps and coming back and talking to us.
Yep, that's in the October-November engagement round, yep.
No further questions? Thank you so much. The recommendation is that the Environment Services Committee receives and notes the report, Environment Canterbury Request for Feedback, Canterbury Regional Policy Statement. Can I have someone move that, please? Councillor Pye, and a second, Councillor Scott. Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies. Really appreciate that. And our final report, 7.3, progress towards the first carbon inventory of council activity. We have Rhys Taylor, Climate Change Advisor, and Andrew Dixon, Group Manager, Infrastructure. Thank you.
Good morning, councillors. This is a very brief progress report for you at your request, to let you know that the work is well underway now to produce our first or baseline carbon footprint or carbon inventory for the council's work. And in the paper I've indicated some of the boundaries of what we intend to include in our first year's work. We may be more ambitious if we continue the process, but we need more friends and allies to have a bigger scope. For example, if we were to include council-controlled organisations, we'd need to bring them into that activity. But for this first year, we've decided just to concentrate on the in-house activity for the council. The information sources are becoming available to us. We have complete collaboration from our electricity suppliers, our fuel suppliers, our tourism and travel agencies and so on who are helping us. And to my delight, the tourism and travel, which is often a rather complicated process, has all been processed anyway by Orbit Travel using the same method we're using, which is very convenient. So we can take the results of their calculations, put them straight into our calculations. I found staff colleagues very interested in this process. It's helping to generate more awareness across the office and across our units. For example, yesterday I paid a visit to the wastewater treatment plant and had a very useful discussion talking about some of the ideas that our colleagues are already generating to become more carbon efficient. There's some wonderful examples being quoted. I'm finding this also from the waste team and from the transport team. So this is going to be a very useful baseline for us to then go on with the knowledge to manage with a focus on climate mitigation, if you like, reducing our impact, whilst we're trying to be efficient and effective in all the other criteria we already apply. Any questions?
Councillor Scott? Sorry, Councillor Shannon, sorry.
You're fine, OJ. Thank you very much. My question was just surrounding what we're using and deciding to measure, how we're measuring, what have you. Nobody else is governing that, right? We've selected ourselves what we're going to measure and what we're going to compare against and what have you. So my question would be, why would we not measure, for example, the CO2 removal of our council-owned green areas and the likes? And the reason I say that is so that we're not just potentially presenting something that may be just negative. I mean, an outcome could well be that people in the community may then be able to see that if I myself plant more plants and shrubs, more green area and what have you in their own properties, I would love to have been able to see not just our output, if you like, but what does council own, which is offsetting that to some extent, and you know, not just our forestry, for example.
It would be very desirable, I think, for us to try to measure and quantify the effect of carbon removal that's happening. The focus at the moment is on the most potent greenhouse gases that we are emitting, for example, by burning fossil fuels in our vehicle fleet. The carbon removal that's happening is only measurable in some small areas. We can do some calculations based on the forestry and how much is stored or sequestered in our forestry. We don't have a tool for measuring the effect of our grasslands or our parks or our amenity trees or street trees. We simply haven't got a measurement method for that. So yes, we should acknowledge that we have a rural estate and we have parkland and it will be contributing to removal of carbon, but we haven't got a measuring mechanism for it.
So one doesn't exist?
So we don't have a measuring mechanism for that.
I mean, we don't, but one doesn't exist, is that what you're saying?
The guesstimates that are used by some other councils are not particularly reputable. I think that's the important point.
We couldn't create something ourselves?
Councils, it depends on how much you wish to invest, but I wouldn't currently recommend that you invest in doing pioneering research into how to measure that.
That's not what I was asking.
We need to piggyback on approaches being taken elsewhere. Yeah. To help respond to that more constructively, though, Palmerston North Council have developed quite an interesting mechanism for estimating the carbon inputs and outputs within a whole district. And they're testing this idea out at the moment and discussing it between councils. It has some promise. If it looks as though it's going to be useful to us, we could consider doing such work for our district within our geographic area. I'm not proposing we work on that for this year, though. So this report is a baseline, particularly on the impacts for the council in the last recently completed financial year.
Basically, we'll keep a watching brief on it, and if there's opportunities arise, it's something we can look at as a next step. But yeah, at the moment, we're just looking at what we are, our carbon production as such.
I've got a question as well. You mentioned here the work will be undertaken mainly in-house, so with resources stretched already in-house, how do we intend to sort of tackle that, make sure we have the right resources?
You have the resource of some of my time with my carbon brief. I'm looking outwards into the community, but also within the council, and it fits within my work to do a fair bit of the organising of this. I'm finding tremendous collaboration from colleagues across the office who are able to help me identify exactly the information we need, pull it out of their usually computer-held systems, and pass it on. So it's not had an undue demand on any of my colleagues' work at the moment.
Basically, we're using existing data sets.
Yeah.
So there's little extra resourcing requirement.
And a little bit of external help we've needed, we brought in from a government-recommended consultancy who are based with Landcare Research, who provided us with enough to audit our work to make sure it's reputable.
for want of a better word, is it going to become more onerous as we move forward?
Depends, Mr. Chairman, on how bold we wish to be. I would argue that the most important impacts, the largest in scale, are going to be fairly easy to identify. If we want to go down to a very, very fine scale, we'll start asking for an analysis of taxi journeys or something similar. We could get down to a scale where the effort invested in gathering the information is not really very productive or efficient. I think it's really important that we should be efficient in our approach rather than trying to be complete. It's really hard to be complete.
Any other questions? Councillor Booth?
I would have thought there would have been probably a standard template available, and you simply plug in your numbers in regards to population, etc., and it would spit out a number that's probably within plus or minus 10%, which we could simply probably do on a desktop. So surely let's not reinvent the wheel here and waste time and money.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't see any point. Okay, so as long as I think if you were able to get some idea within a plus or minus, it doesn't have to be specific, but good enough.
I think Councillor Booth is really much of my own mind on this, that we need guidance as to the scale of the impact rather than the fine detail. That's really the point I'm making. And the help that we're getting in from Toitū Environmental Care, who are part of the Landcare Research Group, is to check that we're doing it in a way that's sufficiently reputable that we can be audited, and if, as we suspect, central government through the auditor will be looking at the work of councils in this field, that we've done a creditable baseline job. So yes, we're using a simple system. We use a piece of software provided into which we enter the information we gather, the data, and it does the calculations for us. We've not reinvented that.
Any other questions? Councillor Pine?
So I was just trying to find the report from the last meeting. I thought this was regulated and that's why we were doing it, or is soon going to be regulated. Yeah, okay, because I just noted that you said what other councils are doing, but it's going to become regulation, isn't it? Do you know when?
I'm waiting for an announcement of when it would be regulated, but yes, the advice we've had from Local Government New Zealand, from other sources, is that we should expect this to be regulated, possibly from as soon as next financial year. So it is sensible for us to have this in position, but we've done it because of the initiative the council wished to take to be carbon aware. It fits with the resolutions we've already taken as a council.
Just,
yeah, Bowen?
Thanks, Councillor Jackson. Just one question off to the side, just to your point around resource. I know we've got a second role that's due in the climate space. When is that going to be advertised? Probably a question for you, Mr. Dixon.
Yeah, we have, looking at scoping up that role, we need to make sure that there's clear parameters of what that role is going to produce. So at the moment it's a pause, but we will be looking at that very shortly to additional resourcing.
Okay, there's probably interest from Chair of Environmental Services and possibly Deputy and myself just to be involved just in around some of our priorities that we've worked through, and there's some things that I think that we want to see some direction on, so would be keen to have a conversation, because I was keen to see that move forward, because it just seems to have been parked almost for some time, and it would be nice to have a date. Yeah, brilliant, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bowen. The recommendation is that the Environmental Services Committee receives notes. Sorry, received notes. This council carbon inventory progress update. Can I please have someone to move that? Mayor Bowen, seconder. Councillor Parker, thank you. Thank you very much, Rhys. Andrew.
Look forward to sharing the report with you since
We don't have any urgent business or minor nature matters. I just would like to make just a quick apology, put it down to first time nerves. I did mention Geraldine Community Board. I didn't mention your name, Rosie Woods, thank you very much. And I didn't mention the apologies for the Temuka Community Board, Nicola Nemo, or the Point Community Board, Michael Thomas. So an apology from them and an apology from me too. So I'll close this meeting now at 9 past. Sorry?
Councillor Piddington.
Just as a matter of minor nature, I just wondered if we could invite ECAN. It appears that Washdyke's broken all sorts of records for high pollution nights, PM10s with over 20 so far this year. Next best is Kaiapoi with 5. Christchurch City has 2. Because I thought they were doing a lot of work around that out at Washdyke, and I'm just interested to see where it sits. Because despite all their hard work, it seems to have gone the other way.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Piddington. I think, like Elvis, ECAN have left the building. So I'll follow that up for you outside of this forum, if that's okay with you.
Yep, that'd be great. Thank you.
And through you, Mr. Chair, they have, previously done a yearly update, which is really valuable, so it would be good to request that on an annualised basis.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Stuart. I didn't see you there in the background there. So you will close this meeting now at 11:10. Thank you.